So what we're going to do is we're going to do a combination of recording our own music and adding loops. Now, loops are an essential part, in my opinion, of any producer's arsenal, any songwriter's arsenal, any sound designer's arsenal. If you have loops of audio or of virtual instrument clips that we call MIDI, then you are able to supplement your ideas. You are able to create templates for the ideas that you will later write. And sometimes you don't need to rewrite something 20 times. You can just make a loop for it and then use that every time. So I'm going to start with a trap. Thank you so much for the 5-month subscription. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Trap. I'm going to start with a simple drum groove. Then I'm going to add a bass line. Then I'm going to add some chords. And then I'm going to write a melody over top. So let's find a drum beat. All right, so this seems pretty good. Let's use this. Let's take this and let's see what we can do. Oop, hovering over the thing. This is one thing that you might learn as you're starting to get into this writing. It's like, oh, I can loop. Drag to the right to loop the region. Oh, so it keeps playing. And I don't have to copy and paste or anything. I'm just going to drag this out to 8 because that's going to be our section. So how would I adjust this cycle? Is there a way to do this? Maybe select this region and then cycle. Nope, Shift-C, Command-C, Alt-C. I'm just trying hotkeys that I would know. It looks like to expand it, you just got to drag this to the right. That's okay. So this is our starting idea. Now let's get a bass line. Let's go over here and look for bass. Let's see what we got. Alright, so I have an idea now. These two sound like they work really well together. So let's take this and let's look at this. Drag these out. But I want to fit this one in, right? So instead, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this back, and I'm going to do a little bit of an advanced technique. Now, you don't need to necessarily do this, but this is a way that you can start to compose ideas, which is look at your song in like these little chunks. You can see the loop is this one bar idea. We call each of these divisions a bar. You can see up here it says bar and beat. So this is bar 1, this is bar, looks like these are actually 2 bar ideas, excuse me. This is bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, and bar 4. And you can see at the end of bar 2, on this drum beat, there's a little thing happening, what we will call a drum fill. Listen to the drums. You have that bum ba da ba thing at the end. But this bass, it doesn't really have that same sort of thing. It's technically leaving space for the drums. But what if we do the same thing in the opposite direction? So let's go back here, pull this out, and then add in this first one right here. As you can see, it actually slots in right there perfectly. Almost like it was made to do that, right? Kind of crazy. Maybe we'll pull this back a little bit, and we'll just stop it right at that drum hit right there. Oops, I don't want to zoom in yet. And then I'm going to select all of these. And let's see, I know this, but I want to just show you. Let's see how we can duplicate these ideas. Let's see, copy, paste. Let's see, is there not a duplicate? I'm surprised about that. If I do Command D, okay, if I do D, nope. That's interesting. So instead, let's just Command C to copy. Let's move our playhead here. Command V. Right? So now let's listen to this full idea. Now that we have this extra bass slotted in this little gap, giving us essentially a bass fill to complement our drum fill. Ooh! Okay. Now we have this really nice expressive phrase that locks us into these two 4-bar loops, right? These two are identical. They happen in the same exact way. So how can we make this one a little bit more engaging? How can we change this to make what we have feel like something is going to evolve here? Well, one thing you can do is after 4 bars, try adding a new element. We're going to use a shaker loop. Just looking for one that sounds good. I like this one. Yeah, that seems like it has a nice groove to it. So let's just pull it in here and just layer this underneath. Pull this cycle area back and then drag it out. And let's listen to our new idea. There we go. Now it feels all of a sudden different, right? We have kind of this A side and this B side. So we're starting to write some music, but now we want more stuff in here. So I'm going to grab some piano loops. I will say I believe these tune to whatever key you have here. I could be wrong, but if you're in GarageBand and you're using these loops, sometimes the loops will tell you their key. The reason why Apple loops do not is, I believe, because they tune to whatever key you have here. If I tested this out, I believe this would be in the key of F, but that's why, like, if I go to electric piano, you can see none of these give you a key because they're all meant to just kind of like work. So let's try and find some sort of chord rhythm. Okay. I like that one. Let's try and sync these up, right? So I'm going to play this once we get to bar 5. I'm just going to click this and try and preview it. Oh, that works. There we go. Okay, that works. That works. Let's drag this in. Ooh, and this one, as you can see, this says 16 beats, so this loop takes the whole 4 bars to terminate. So we might not even have to change this. We might just be able to duplicate this or loop it. Let's maybe loop it, but cut out that very last pair of notes. So we're going to stop right there and let this bass go. It without those last 2 notes, so I'm going to bring this back in. Gran Turismo type beat. Yeah, it seems pretty fun, and all we're doing right now is we're just adding in loops. We're not even really coming up with a lot of our own ideas, but since we're just starting off, since if you're watching this video later, you're probably just getting into music for the first time. You might have experimented with some other programs, but this is meant to liberate you from that. Because now, all we got to do is figure out how to get that keyboard back up for this. And then we can start coming in with our own little melodies. You can see I'm going up to Window, Show Keyboard, Show Musical Typing, Command K. Let's bring that up. So now I'm going to turn on the metronome, and we're just going to jam. Now, I know the notes for the key of F minor, so I would recommend when you're starting off, just stick with the key of C major. It's going to sound maybe a little bit cheesy at first, so don't worry about it. It's okay if it sounds a little bit cheesy at first, but you'll be able to feel safe by only using these keys right here. Only using your home row, A, S, D, F, G, H, J, K, L, semicolon, and this, I think, comma or apostrophe. You don't have to worry about anything else. But I'm going to be riffing in the key of F minor, so don't worry if you see me pressing these notes right here. That's just because those are the notes that change when you're going from C major to F minor. I'm going to make sure I have a count in here so that I can do it. And we're going to try and use our hotkeys. So we learned that go back to the beginning, press 0, and R is to record. And I'm going to press spacebar to pause it. And as you can see, it automatically locks in that loop, right? And it's just going to keep looping it forever. If we don't want that, we can just go ahead and, I think, just click that and it'll get rid of all of them. But now we have all of our instruments together as one long, big, happy family. That's a little bit early. That's a little bit early. Right? We have this bum, 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 bum kind of thing. It's a nice little tune. So let's go in and let's actually start writing. So let's double click on this. You can also press, if you have the musical keyboard typing not displayed, I can close that with Command K. E will also open that, as we saw. That's the editor's button. Let's go up here. And let's just look at this. I'm going to resize this a little bit. I'm going to change the zoom up here to make all the notes visible. Now I'm going to select all of these notes. And there's two things I could do. One, I could manually move these notes. I can do this, and that totally works, right? Totally fine to do that. I'm using Command Z to undo. But instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the notes. And I'm just going to click this quantize pop-up button. I like that one, but I don't like these. These feel off. Don't quite like that one. So some of these are off. Let's go ahead, select all of these. I'm going to quantize this to an 8th note. As you can see, these two notes moved over a little bit. These notes all kind of locked in. These notes moved over. And if I just play this through, feels a lot more expressive, a lot more rigid, but it fits with the groove a lot more. And when I unsolo this, feels like a complete loop, right? We have officially written music. We've done it. We have achieved the goal. Can you believe it? We are now composers. But obviously there's way more to it than that. But this is really how everything really works. We have this, if I zoom in a little bit, we have this one bar idea right here. You can kind of see it. If I just make this loop region only, oh, that's how you can set it, TIL. One bar. Turn off the metronome with the letter K. Each of these elements has the start of an idea. usually kind of loop into itself in some way. We take that and we extend it out to this 2-bar idea, right? And here is where it really starts to become music, right? Because at 1 bar, it's just a loop. We just have what I would call a question. When we look at this process, the question needs an answer. So if we go to just each instrument and listen to the first bar, then the second, think about it in terms of the question and the answer. So the question is bum, bum, and the answer is bum, bum, bum. Go to the drum groove. Those little tom drums right there are the answer. We have boom, ch, boom, ch. And then we're just doing boom, ch, boom, ch. But how do we answer that? With this little tom roll. Same thing with the bass. Where with this, it's actually doing a response by removing information. You see that? Here, there's more musical information at the end of the first bar than there is at the second. So not every answer has to be more stuff added. Sometimes removing things is also a way to answer a question. Silence as an answer. Right? It creates a sense of anticipation for the next section. If I go down to this chord loop, it's pretty obvious where the question and the answer goes. Because one is asking a harmonic question, the other is answering that harmonic question, and it's just sort of moving back and forth between those. From there, from that 2-bar idea, you're basically just duplicating it out and creating some larger variation. Some things, the 2-bar loop is really all you need. Some things, you need to change the 2-bar loop and give it like what we would call a fill or a transition into some other sound. Some loops will take the entire 4 bars, like this piano takes an entire 4 bars to finish itself. And this speaks to that broader question and answer. Because just as bar 1 was the question to bars to answer, bars 1 and 2 are the question that bars 3 and 4 are answering. Question. Answer. Very clearly defined, where even though bar 3 starts the same, so you're allowed to repeat an idea, like this one you're allowed to repeat, this one's repeated at the start as well. But even with the repeat, we have the question with this smooth resolution, and then we have the answer with this slightly more agitated musical resolution. And then some other ideas can evolve even further once you expand past. What we did is we took this 4-bar question and we created an answer, right? The overall song has, since this is just a repeat, the answer for the drums, I'm going to move these together. The answer for the drums right here is by the addition of the shaker loop. We can listen to these 2 loops together. How's it going, Crash? And we're going to notice, hopefully, how it doesn't really feel like we've changed the drums. We've just completed the answer to the drums question. Right? This is our question. The answer for this first 2 bars is represented by the silence, again, removing things to answer something with silence or tension. And now, very clear new section, right? I actually want to do one thing real quick before I move on, because I just heard it like I just heard something for this section right here. I think if you just click and drag, yeah, if you click and drag outside of it, you can loop. rid of what I wanted. Hold on. I'm trying to get rid of like this last right there. I just want to get this. Which this is unnecessary, but this is me being a composer or producer needing to fix things before I can move on. I think that's correct. I just want to like really. Yeah, just like that. And it's little things like that that add up over a mix, but you don't have to worry about that if you're new. That's just like, if you hear something and you think it'll sound good, do it. I thought it would sound good if that shaker stopped early. And that's like intuition, experience, and listening to other songs and seeing what they do and just kind of like having this bank of ideas. But you're just getting started. Don't worry about it. You're just building your loops so that now we have this varied melodic question and answer. Question and answer. That's a question turning into a new answer. That's now a new questions being responded to with this answer. But then the question becomes, how do we develop on this idea? I'm not going to worry about that right now because I want to now immediately pivot. You've just started to get comfortable. Now I'm going to make you uncomfortable, and I want you to focus on mixing these sounds together. Because right now, this works. But the piano, for example, is a little bit quiet. And these shakers, for example, are a bit too loud. So I want to figure out how to do this a little bit better, how to make this sound a little bit more cohesive. So what we're going to do now is actually reorganize the entire loop structure in order to make our song fit for what I would consider our mix. Now, you don't have to keep it like this. I believe one thing you can do, I don't know if you can do it in GarageBand, but in Logic Pro, you can also start to create these things called alternates, which is where you would make different versions of your project to flip back and forth between. But for now, all we're going to do is we're just going to save this project. We should have saved it at the beginning. I made a mistake there. I should have actually saved this before, because if you crash, you might lose that information. So we're going to call this My First Song. So what we're going to do is now I'm going to create a new version. I'm going to call this one, I did Command-Shift-S to save as. I'm going to do underscore, and I'm going to call this Mix1. Just so we can start to do an iteration on our project. So if we mess something up, we can go back to a previous version. Now on this one, I'm going to move the drums up to the top. I'm going to put the drums underneath the bass underneath the drums. I'm going to put the chords underneath the bass, the piano underneath the chords, and then the shaker is at the very top. Now, if we listen to these sounds, this has a lot of frequencies, but it's mostly the lower frequencies that we're hearing. We hear a kick, we hear some tom drums, there's the snare, there's some shakers and stuff. So it is pretty good in terms of its frequency ranges, but I would consider this mostly a low frequency sound because the thing I care about most in this is that kick drum. This is about as low as that kick, maybe a little bit higher. So I'm just going in terms of like the frequencies or the pitches of the sounds, things that sound heavier, lower, deeper. These are going to be the sounds that are lower in frequency. Kick drums, basses, tom drums, synthesizers, or synthesizer basses, tubas, cellos, all these types of instruments are very heavy, very big. They move a lot of air, so they sound lower in frequency. As we go up to these chords, they're a little bit higher. They definitely have some lower frequencies in them, but they're mostly kind of like these middle frequencies. I would say this is getting closer to the range of the human voice. or to things like a clarinet or not a cello, or a viola, or a guitar, things like that. I'll do it in a second shuffle. And so hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing here. This is close to a similar range, but we're getting a little bit higher. And then finally, this is the highest pitch, the highest frequency sound. It's all, it's almost noise, right? So what we're doing is we are ordering our mix down based on the placement of our sounds in the frequency spectrum. Now, if I go over here, I go to the, I think the detail view, and I click on this thing called EQ. Let's click on this button here. You can see we have a little grid with a little graph that goes from 20 all the way up to 20K, and you'll see it will stop at 500 and then go to 1K, 2K, etc. So these are going to be the actual frequencies. This is the number of times a sound wave rotates every single second, or every time it pushes or pulses like a wave. 20, we call it hertz or cycles per second. 50 hertz, 100 hertz, 200, 500. And from here, the K just means 1,000. So this is 1,000 hertz, 2,000 hertz, 5,000 hertz, 10,000, and then 20,000 hertz. The K, we call those kilo. It's like the metric system, kilohertz. So 1 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz, etc. It's easier to say than 1,000 hertz. So the human ear hears from 20 to 20K hertz, 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. These sounds, see that kick? It's mostly around here, between 50 and 100. So these higher frequencies. If I go down to the bass, same thing. Mostly these lower frequencies. See, this one's way more. Here, it stops below 100, kind of stopping above 2,000 hertz. We can go to the electric piano, do the same exact thing. Even higher. And then the shaker. There's only this frequency range up here. You can see this stuff down here. Don't worry about that. That doesn't matter. I'm just introducing you to that just to show you why we're ordering this the way it is. We will use this later. We'll use these things called filters to filter out or remove certain frequencies or even boost frequencies depending, but don't worry about that. That's not important. Introducing you, we'll circle back. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these tracks. I'm going to take this volume fader, this volume switch, or volume slider, they call it. You'll sometimes see it referred to as a fader, but slider, I guess, works. I'm going to turn these all the way down. See how when I have this at its starting point, it technically says 0 dB. We can go above 0 dB. Instead, we're going to go all the way down until we have this little sideways 8. If you're unfamiliar, I'm assuming you all are, but if you're unfamiliar, that is the symbol for infinity. It goes on into forever, beyond our comprehension. So this means when I have these all down at minus infinity decibels, that's what dB stands for. Decibels is just a measure of volume. I don't hear anything. It's clearly playing, but I don't hear anything. So now, I'm going to just pull this up until it feels comfortable. Past 0, it definitely starts to sound kind of weird, kind of crunchy. I don't quite like that, so I'm going to keep it below 0, just to be safe. So in my headphones, that feels pretty good. That feels like a good, comfortable volume. Now I'm going to slowly bring in this bass until it sounds to my ears like it's working with that kick drum. All right, now it's starting to get louder. All right, so So this is at about -5. This is about -4. So it looks like it's in about 1 decibel or so, not even, of distance, because they're very slow waves. Low frequencies are very slow. When we talk about these numbers, 20 cycles a second, you could potentially even count that if you were able to count up to 20 in 1 second. It's okay. But some waves, but waves below 20, like if you had to count up to, say, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, you could totally count up 5 cycles in a second. And because it's so slow, it takes a lot of time, a lot of power to get those frequencies heard. So low frequencies require more volume to sound as loud as other frequencies. That's why these are close to the same volume. Now I'm going to add in the piano. Here, all of a sudden the piano is way louder. If I have it at -4, it sounds louder, right? It sounds louder. Now, I want to basically figure out why this is not working, right? Because here, it's clearly louder, even though it's at the same volume. Similar sort of thing to why this needed to be at the same volume. This has higher frequencies, so it doesn't need as much volume to sound as loud. So we're just trying to make it sound as loud, right? So I'm almost 4 dBs quieter. I'm almost half as high in volume as these two sounds to get the piano to sound as loud. It feels pretty good. Start adding in the melody. So this one, contrary to what we had for this last example, needed more volume because it's a single instrument. It is playing a single note at a time, and it's generally a little bit softer. If I opened up, the actual note velocities, these things down there, I could maybe make it a little bit more aggressive, but that's okay. You can see these are all green notes. If they get more red, they become more aggressively played, but we're not worrying about that. I liked how it sounded. So really all I'm doing is just making sure that this melody carries over everything else, because this is what the audience will sing. So even if it was as loud down here, I would say this down here is about as loud. But since it's only a melody, it's not a chord or a bass line or a drum groove, it's harder to necessarily isolate. So bringing this all the way up around here allows it to stand out, gives the audience something to connect with and something to sing along to. Now I'm going to bring in the shaker and watch how quiet I need to make it for it to sound loud. Already audible. At like -15 decibels compared with -4, -5, -8.5, 0 dB, -15 decibels. And this hi-hat, or the shaker, is still crystal clear. It just adds so much lift. So now we have not a good mix. What we are going to do now is circle back to using our DAW, because we've gotten familiar. We've even learned some things about our DAW when we were trying to write. We started learning about these features, this quantized thing, which I definitely brushed over. I definitely glossed over that for a reason, because now I want to show you how to deal with this thing called the piano roll, which is going to be the majority of your time spent writing if you are going to try and play your own music. Or at least if you're trying to play your own music into the project. If you want to just use audio clips like this, which we would call samples or loops, more than welcome to, but inevitably there will be a time where you come up and face this.